Hi everyone, welcome to part 1 of squares and square roots. Here's today's FLT. Given a number, I will be able to evaluate its square and or square root value. First, let's take a look at squares. To square a number, multiply it by itself. For example, let's say we have this right here. We would read this as 3 squared. This exponent 2 is read as squared. 3 squared is the same thing as 3 times 3. We're multiplying 3 by itself. And 3 times 3 equals 9. So we would say that 3 squared equals 9. So to square a number, you're going to multiply it by itself. Here's our first example for this lesson. Evaluate 4 squared. So we have 4 with the exponent 2. This tells us to square the number. So we're going to multiply 4 by itself. So 4 times 4, which equals 16. 4 squared equals 16. Notice here, to take the square, we simply multiply the same number twice. For example 2, let's evaluate 9 squared. This is the same thing as saying 9 times itself, 9. And since 9 times 9 is 81, 9 squared equals 81. Here, we're going to evaluate 15 squared. And feel free to use a calculator. 15 squared is the same thing as 15 times 15, which equals 225. 15 squared equals 225. Now let's take a look at the idea of taking the square root. So we just looked at how to square a number. A square root basically just goes the other way. So we know that 3 squared equals 9. So if we square the number 3, we get 9. Again, 3 squared is 9. But what if we go the other way? This is called taking the square root. We would say that the square root of 9 is 3. So when you're taking the square root, ask yourself this question. What can we multiply by itself to get this? So for example, what number can I multiply by itself to get 9? 3. That's why the square root of 9 is 3. And this symbol right here tells you to take the square root. We also call this symbol the radical. So for example, let's say you see an equation like this. We would read this as the square root of 9 equals 3. For our first example here, let's evaluate the square root of 25. We focus on this number 25. What times itself would equal 25? It has to be the same number here. 5 would work because 5 times itself, 5, equals 25. So this means that the square root of 25 equals 5. And notice how we were able to find an exact value for the square root of 25. 25 is actually called a perfect square. A perfect square is simply a square of an integer. But this is just some extra information for now. Next, let's evaluate the square root of 144. So we ask ourselves, what number times itself would equal 144? And right here, we have to make sure that the two numbers are the same. Since 12 times itself, 12, equals 144, I know that the square root of 144 equals 12. Notice how I got an exact value. 144 is actually another perfect square. For example 3, we're going to evaluate the square root of 27, but we are asked to round to the nearest tenth. So we're not going to get an exact answer. Let's actually use our calculators. You can either use an online calculator, such as the one provided on Desmos or DeltaMath, or you can use a calculator on your phone. Depending on the type of calculator you're using, you will be typing in the expression differently. If you're using a calculator like the one on Desmos, simply type it in the order it shows up, so the square root and then 27. We have our answer right here. For the iPhone, you have to type backwards in a sense. First, you type 27, and then click that square root symbol. Either way, you'll end up with the same answer. So we found that the square root of 27 equals 5.196, and the decimal keeps going, but we're asked to round to the nearest tenth. So we look at the 10th place, which is 1, and look at the digit right under it. Since it's 9, we'll be rounding up. So we're increasing 1 by 1. Round into the nearest tenth, the square root of 27 is approximately equal to 5.2. And please let me know if you have any questions about rounding. Next, we're going to evaluate the square root of 73. Again, we're asked to round to the nearest tenth. Here, I'm walking through the steps on both types of calculators. Please let me know if you need help navigating your calculator. Again, for the iPhone calculator, you kind of have to go backwards in a sense. 73, and then the square root button. So using our calculator, we found that the square root of 73 is 8.544, and the decimal keeps going, but we're just going to round to the nearest tenth. In this case, we would round down. So the square root of 73 is approximately 8.5. Try this example on your own and then press play when you're ready to compare answers. So the square root of 14, if you plug it into your calculator, is 3.741, and it keeps going. But since we're just rounding to the nearest tenth, in this case we would be rounding down, so we find that the square root of 14 is approximately 3.7. Here's a quick review for today. To square a number, simply multiply it by itself. And a square root goes the other way. What can we multiply by itself to get the number? We use this radical symbol for square roots. Great job today, and please remember to submit your notes on Canvas. Thank you.